Today, acupuncturist Lara is back, and we are talking all about gut health in the fall, the energetics of digestion, microplastics in breast milk and everywhere else. And I am so excited to share this super fun conversation with you. You are listening to the Women's Gut Health Podcast. I'm Molly, integrative functional dietitian, ex-chef, and gut health expert. If you're struggling with constipation, diarrhea, or bloating, I know exactly how you feel because I've had Crohn's disease for almost 30 years. Each week, we'll dive into symptoms, trends, recipes, and navigate the complex landscape of women's health together, all based on scientific evidence, but in a way that makes sense. Ready to understand your body? Good. Let's go. Hi, Lara. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Molly. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So here we go. What was the best thing that you ate this week?
Oh my goodness. So we had soccer and baseball and everything this weekend. So we did a lot of go out and get food after it's done, which was amazing because it was beautiful fall weather, the crisp air, but the sunshine on you, and it's just feeling so good. So we went up to
Mm,
this place really close to where we live in North Portland. They have this like food cart pod attached to a really fun place. Kind of brew pub style. And my son and I shared a chicken vindaloo from this amazing Mediterranean cart that knocked both of our socks off. And it was so
ooh.
good. And I was so excited because Duke, who's my youngest, he just upgraded us to medium in terms of heat instead of mild. And he was like, Mom, this is so good. And I like quote unquote broke the gluten rule. I'm about 80/20 on the gluten rule. I find that that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of my tolerance level for my migraines.
Okay.
And so we each shared like we had shared like half a big old piece of garlic naan, and it was so delicious. And he probably said like 6 times, Mom, this is so good. I was like, I know, this is delicious. No, Mom, this is so good. And so we just had such a
Oh,
moment sitting in the sun, eating like this, kind of acrid, spicy food. And it just seemed like all the flavors and the warmth and the sun and the chilliness and the outside just all went together so well. And it was just such a good moment. I loved
oh,
it.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? What did you eat? What
Awesome.
did you eat that knocked your socks off?
So we were at my in-laws, and they have a restaurant near where they live, which is also a farm. It's in kind of outside Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. And they grow all these veggies
Oh,
and
yum.
source all this stuff like kind of locally, and it's just like incredible. So I had a bunch of sides, but they make like a broccoli casserole
Yum.
that is to die for. And I also had butter beans, and I also had mac and cheese, and it was
Whoa. It
amazing.
sounds like
Yeah, it was
comfort
so
food
good.
land.
It definitely
Oh,
was.
that's
But it's like so like and green beans. There's just like so many, I don't know, it's like comfort food veggies. You know what I mean?
yes. Kind of getting into those more like, well, veggies, they're just so power packed full of so many good nutrients, and they're just so dense. And when you can like marry it with dairy and like
I
salt
know.
and cheese, you're like, I just died and went to heaven. What is this? So was the
Yes.
broccoli like casserole, as you say, quote unquote casserole, was it like an actual casserole? Was there like flaky, yummy, like what do you call it? Kind of breadcrumby stuff on the
Oh,
top.
like
And
pie
then,
crust.
yeah, what was it like?
No.
Oh,
No, it was really just broccoli and cheese.
oh,
And but I mean it was
you're like, well, that's fine.
so good. And I don't eat a lot of dairy because it makes me break out. And also, and I know that correlation, the research is kind of split, but also for inflammatory bowel disease, dairy is not the best. And I loved every bite.
So good. And did you feel like being in, kind of that environment with your family and, just the amount of love and care and energy being put into that food, small manufacturing and like being that it was like or I should say growing, small agriculture and whatnot. And then like being around your family and all of that, did it just make, the food so much better with like that energetic engagement of positivity and love and connection and everything?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
I just feel like we sometimes forget about that when it comes to food. I actually read something, if I can dive for a second to a different place.
Dive.
I actually read one of your um, post the other day, and it was something about like standing up while eating. And I think maybe I touched on this on the last one. I'm so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I do that a lot at work, and it's so bad, like so bad. But that's just kind of the nature of the healthcare industry. You're on your feet and you're like, I have to pee. I'll probably get to it in 30 minutes. I need a snack. I'll probably get to it in an hour. And you just like wolf it down at your little station, you know? And so it's such a luxury to be able to like sit. Well, my kids and I always sit down for dinner and chat and breathe and eat, no matter how quick the dinner was put together, we always like stop and be calm for the actual ingestion. But that's a luxury. And I think it's a luxury for a lot of people, really,
Mm,
how much we have to put in a hurry. So I thought that was a really
hmm
good point that you made, that we need to be in that sense of community and restful place and calm and, speaking from our hearts and being connected and, stimulating that vagus nerve to get some great digestion. It's so cool. Like that's such a huge part of it.
Yes,
Like I think I heard someone
it
one time
is.
say that like was it empathy? Was it empathy? That was one of the main ways to like wow your, no, it was compassion. Excuse me, it was compassion.
Mm,
That like embodying compassion was one of the main ways to kind of like open up that throat chakra and really bring in the vagus nerve engagement when it comes to food.
absolutely. And, I talk about this a lot with my clients. Like, okay, so when we go out to eat, like, what's most important? And I think we get kind of, there are so many things that can happen, right? Like, if you have stomach issues, if you have GI symptoms, then, you get nervous about what you're supposed to
Oh,
order. And you get nervous about like asking questions. And a lot of people, because my practice is based mainly in the Southeast, a lot of people, don't want to be impolite. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, girl, like, please just ask all the questions. And
Mm-hmm.
looking at the menu ahead of time can help too
Mm-hmm.
with that. So that you can spend the time instead of like trying to figure out what the menu says, spend more time enjoying the company, doing what you went there to do, which, yes, it's to eat, but it's also to really, engage in that loving connection and social kind of battery charging that we
Yeah.
need
Yes, that sense of
for
community and
longevity and
connection we
health.
all need. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's like the chicken or the egg when you have quote unquote issues with food, right? You're like, should I eat this and see
Right.
what happens, or should I be nervous about eating it? Decide not to eat it, eat something else, and then wonder if that was the thing that upset my tummy. Or was it just me being freaked
Mhm.
out about it to begin with? But also, I don't want to feel
Mhm.
like shit. So it's completely valid for me to feel a little bit anxious. Like, it's so
Yep.
hard. It's so hard having gut stuff, man. And I just will bring a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine bubble in, and that worry and anxiety and that consistent, not really ruminating, but just anxious thoughts paired with engagement of the nervous system. That is really what will engage the spleen energy emotionally. And so if you're doing too much of that, you're totally taking away from how you're preparing it to help you energetically, what we call rotten and ripen your food in order for further ingestion, later on. But engaging the spleen is what organ really engages at that time in order to, allow you. And if you're worried, you're like, oh, well, we just shunted all that energy over to worry instead of digestion.
Mhm. Yes, because digestion takes so much energy.
Yes, and if you worry all the time about it, let's say your like little pot of digestive energy just gets worn down and worn down and worn down, and then you don't really have a lot of it.
Mhm.
That's really hard.
100%. Yes, it
Well,
is.
I'm glad you
It
didn't worry
is.
about your farm food. I wouldn't have either. That sounds amazing.
Oh my gosh, I love that restaurant. And like knowing that I was going out to eat later that day, I made sure to prioritize some protein and other kind of things that are more in line with what I normally eat so that because I heard an interesting and then we'll get into the next thing after this, but I heard an interesting somebody said something on a podcast that was like, you know, people worry about their calories for a day when what matters is the week. And I think that it's important to remember that for everything that we eat,
Hmm.
because we gain and lose a pound over 3,500 calories. That doesn't happen in a day. It happens 500 additional calories per day for a week.
Wait, say that
Or
again
same with
slower.
losing.
Wait, say that again slower.
Okay.
So I don't think a lot in calories. I think more in energy. So help me understand that a little better.
Sure.
So you're saying 3,500 calories. That's like a
Is
whole
a
day's worth
pound.
of eating food. Yes?
Yeah, sure. Could be a whole day's worth of eating
Okay.
food. Could be that you eat 500 calories in excess of what your body needs per day for 7 days. Isn't it convenient how that works out? And you gain a pound, or you are in a 500 calorie deficit per day for 7 days
Okay.
and you lose a pound.
Ah, I'm with you. Okay. And that
So,
300, that 3,500 can vary depending on the constitution of the human. But ideally, as an example, that's kind of what you're getting at. Like this excess or
yes.
deficiency can truly lead to what you're holding on to or what you're allowing to leave.
And like we just said, digestion takes so much
Oh,
energy that if you're eating something that's harder to digest, like a plant or a more of a whole food,
yes.
then you're not going to absorb as many of the calories from the food because it does take some calories to digest
Yes.
versus like Cheez-Its or Cheetos,
Yes.
which we would be absorbing 100% of that because it does not really require very much energy at
Oh
all
my
to
gosh, that's
digest.
so true. And can I circle back and marry in the spleen energy thing here real quick?
Ooh.
So what's so cool about what you just said in terms of the energetics that it takes to digest is so cool in terms of the spleen energy, because we're coming into the season where it's really important to remember that the energetics of your food shouldn't be more than the output that you are trying to engage within the season, right? Like how it naturally, like in the summer, you're really active and you're staying up late because the sun is out. Whereas in the fall and the winter, you're a lot more internal and whatnot. So you need your digestion to kind of match that. And so I guess what I'm saying is like
Mm.
if you're eating something that's more high calorie, or in our medicine, you would say like raw or cold. So like a piece of
Mm.
raw broccoli as opposed to like a piece of steamed and warm broccoli, the energetic output it takes, or the caloric engagement that you need to be able to digest those two, are very different. Like it's going to
Yes.
be so much more easy if you've half digested, or if you've warmed it up so your body doesn't have to do the work to make it unraw, right? Like you're using all of these
Mhm.
enzymes and bacteria and acid in the soup of your stomach to break that down. Whereas you've already done that with maybe 3 minutes of just flash boiling it or even
Mm.
steaming it. And then you've got the ability, extra caloric intake, to be able to really bring in the nutrients from that food by making it so much smoother and easily digestible for your body, which is exactly what the spleen loves. The spleen loves to have things that are easy to digest.
You know what's so interesting is oftentimes raw or cold things are more difficult for IBS. So it would cause more bloating, or it would cause, like diarrhea, or it would be like dumping more quickly through your body, or there would be some abdominal pain or gas.
Yes.
And isn't that interesting that
Yes.
in Chinese medicine,
Mm-hmm.
it's put a completely different way, but kind of mirrors that same
Yes,
pattern.
it's parallel just with, us using like yin and yang and up and down and heat and cold and that sort of thing to describe it, as opposed to like caloric output, but it's the same concept. When you make it easy for your body and easy for your constitution, the benefit you get from the food that you're bringing in is so much more vast, as opposed to making your body work hard to do it. It's like eating greasy food as opposed to a bowl of soup. The energetic output is so incredibly, so much more intense with something greasy. Your body's like, what is this?
Yes.
You got to use Drano to get it down. Or a soup, your body's like, woohoo, I'm crushing it. This is so easy.
Okay. What'd you see on the internet?
So I
that you want to talk
I
about?
love this post that I came across that talks about just some basic things. I think it's four things that you can do to support gut health in the fall. And I loved it because I feel like it was a marriage of the way that we speak about things. And I'll just kind of say the four right away, and I would love to just have you tell me what you think. One of them was get enough rest. I mean, of course, we
Mm.
all need to get enough rest so we can repair and rejuvenate and recover and replenish. The other one was incorporate seasonal foods. I would love to know what your top favorite foods are. And then take a walk after meals, which I know is very aligned with what you talk about. And this is a huge one for me, which goes right back to the spleen. Swapping cold drinks for warm beverages.
Mm.
Those are the top four. And I love that.
Okay.
I think I mean, those are great for any time, but especially in the fall when it's getting a little cooler, there's more wind, there's a back and forth of, wanting to wear your sweater, taking your sweater off. It's like it's not really regulated. Your body's constantly kind of reacting to what's going on.
Yes, true. And we're changing from a period of being warm, right, to being cooler. And so starting with getting enough rest, certainly that's important for everything. It's important for digestion. It's important for your gut health. It's important to reduce inflammation and your, um, like stress levels, cortisol, all of that, right? Hormonally. But the other thing is getting enough rest for the change of seasons really strikes me because I learned last year that, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but that at some point in history or in some culture or in somewhere, people consider the new year to be the spring equinox.
Yes, Chinese medicine is that for
Do
sure.
you Okay, that makes way more sense because
Yeah.
you don't have any energy in the
Yes.
winter.
I know. I always get surprised by people who are like, I have all these New Year's resolutions. I'm like, you're in the dark. When are you going to do all, why are you bringing in so much light and hyping yourself up and charging your battery, or you're not charging your battery. It's not time to like go and express all that energy that you've been compounding and building and nourishing over the winter time when we're slower. And then you go halfway through that time. I mean, we still have till spring. You're absolutely right. In order to continue to build. And so I'm cool with goals, very goal focused, very goal oriented, of course. But there's just this explosion that happens halfway through that to me seems pretty unwarranted, honestly, if you're going to be living with the seasons.
Well, and like if I were to name one week-long period that I feel the least motivated of any other time in the year, it's after, because it's not just like family and social events and holiday foods and navigating, relationships and gift giving and figuring out what to give for a gift and budgeting for the gifts. It's also like emotionally being inundated every time you walk into a store and
Yeah.
every time you see something. It's just like Christmas, 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 the whole 2 3 month period, and you need a break. And so to take that time and say this is what I'm going to change my
Yeah.
life is, and we'll get more into that as the season comes
Yes.
around, but because it is fall, I think it's a good point
Mhm.
that maybe that doesn't have to be.
Mhm. Yes.
We can relax.
Yeah, and just know that like this is the time where it's okay to wax and wane and like express a little and also kind of get ready to go inward and express a little like this it's the sun is still out. It's not super dark really early yet, but when it is, we'll know and it'll be very much time to go inward. And now we have that opportunity to continue to kind of express a little and put our faces out in the sun and really stock up on our vitamin D and everything for the upcoming darkness. Like it's so great. It's a good time.
Mm, yes.
Which I think
In terms of
foods, which
produce.
yes,
Oh,
exactly. I was going to say
yes,
that's a great segue to food. Like when you think
it
about foods
is.
for this time of the year, what are your favorite ones that come to mind?
So the fall is the IBS or, like indigestion Super Bowl in terms of seasonal produce because pretty much everything is really easy to digest. It's really good when it's cooked, and cooked foods are easier to
I love
digest.
this. It's the
So,
Super
and
Bowl
somebody,
season for IBS
it
people. That
is,
is the
it
funnest comment
is.
I've heard in a long time. Okay, I won't forget that one. That's great. We're in Super Bowl season. Got it. Mm.
You better believe it. Just because, like, and also, one of my clients kept saying, I've never had trouble with digestion, so I don't know what you're talking about. And meanwhile, she has constipation and bloating. So when I say difficult to digest, what I mean
Yeah.
is if we have diarrhea, constipation, bloating, abdominal pain, gas, all of those, or if we're not satisfied with our bowel movements, they're not complete or whatever it is, um, all of that is a result of impaired digestion.
100%.
So that's kind of what I mean when I say like digestive distress or whatever. I'm saying those IBS type symptoms. And you
Mm-hmm.
can have those even if you don't have a formal IBS diagnosis. But like apples, you can cook them, you can peel them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're so much more gentle for you. And then you can still enjoy that fruit. Squash is got those gentle, easy to digest fibers. It's not like the summer where it's, raw, 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 and that kind of thing. In terms of like sweet potatoes and pumpkin and looking at carrots, um the greens from onions, so leeks or onions, that green part is often easy to digest. Now there is garlic and onions in the fall, which of course people have trouble with sometimes, with it interfering with gut bacteria
Sure.
in the small
Sure.
intestine
Yeah.
and causing carbon
Die
dioxide.
off is hard.
But
Yeah.
beets also really easy to digest, and there's a lot of greens like kale and cooked greens are another thing that usually people can tolerate quite well. So I love fall
Oh,
foods.
me too. And I want to add a little bit to what you were saying to that IBS picture about, what if you're not quote unquote digesting well. I think that maybe some things
Hmm.
people don't think about sometimes is how tired they are after they eat. Like right after eating. If they're just
Hmm.
absolutely fatigued. Like digestion is taking so much energy that I literally I have to sit down and almost nap. That's a pretty good indicator that digestion needs some robustness. And I would say too that for
Yes.
me in the past, before I did a panel to see how my immune system was engaging with certain foods, so like, an immunoglobulin panel with blood, I did not realize, and this is kind of an interesting story and a little bit of a segue, but I think it's important for people to know that I had no digestive symptoms whatsoever. This was right after I had my second child, and they were close-ish to each other, but I was so irritated all the time. And it's not the typical
Mm.
irritation of like there's just a lot to do and I'm tired and that sort of thing. Like I was deeply irritated. Like I felt like my cells were irritated. And I didn't really know how to put it into words or how to describe it. And I just randomly was at the chiropractor and I was kind of talking about this. And he was like, let's do a blood panel. Love this guy. I was so glad that he did it. And I discovered that the two things I was eating the most, which were eggs and almonds, were like off the charts. My body was making an enormous amount of antibodies to those. And I was actually
Hmm.
digesting them just fine, but I wasn't because it was creating inflammation, which was making me so irritated. But my poops were amazing.
Hmm. Oh, wow. Okay. And we often see that. So it depends on which immune markers he pulled. And when you stopped eating them, did you feel
Oh
better?
my gosh. I was like, I'm going to be a good mother. I love this. Because I was so down on myself about being a bad mom. I was like, I'm snapping at the kids and
Hmm.
and then I was like, okay, I got
Hmm.
this. I am going to be a good mom. So yeah.
And those things are those that's a tricky test because it's good that it worked for you. And a lot of times, like when people have intestinal permeability or they have an immune system change, which pregnancy and childbirth, huge, huge change in your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
We do see that the things that we expose our body to consistently can be presented to outside of the intestines. It could possibly leak out of the intestines if there's that space, leaky
Yeah.
gut. Or, there are other ways that our body kind of picks it up and says, this is an invader, like
Mm-hmm.
we're done with
Yep.
you. And so it's important. That's why diversity is such a huge part of eating foods because the more that you can eat pistachios and walnuts and Brazil nuts and all the other nuts
Yes.
instead of just almonds,
Yes.
then the less likely you are to develop that off the chart
Mm-hmm.
immune reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And you always want to get not just IgG, but IgA and IgM at the very least if you're going to do something like that, so that we have a bigger picture. Because IgG can be elevated if it works for you or if it doesn't.
Right, exactly. And my gluten was totally low. They're like, "You're totally fine with gluten." And I was like, "That's funny because if
Mm.
I eat more than, 20%, I get migraines that are strokes. So, no."
Mm.
No, sorry. That's so no. That's good.
Yeah, no, that's totally normal. Totally
I'm
normal.
like, "Oh man."
All your labs are normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll save gluten. We should save gluten for the next time. That'd be a good thing to talk about. Okay. How about taking a walk after meals?
I like this. I know you
Now,
love this
I
though.
would like to
Yeah.
know, I do, but you're very good about hormones and you specialized in creating a product that helps with something like this. So tell me more about what taking a walk after meals does for blood sugar.
Ooh, blood sugar. Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on the meal that you're eating, of course, right? If you've done a good job of starting with your veggies and moving on to your protein and then maybe moving on to your carbs if they're on your plate or your complex carbs, hopefully. That, that load that your body is going to create in terms of that like glycemic index is going to increase a little bit, hopefully not too much. And if you're able to get out and move your muscles around, which guess what organ is related to the muscles in Chinese medicine? Guess which organ nourishes the muscles? When you look at muscle
I
tonicity, what organ would you need to work on?
The
The
liver?
spleen.
Oh my
The
gosh.
spleen is the organ of the day today. Most people, don't even think it's really worth talking about, but
Yeah,
it's really
I didn't
important just
until
energetically.
today.
Yeah. But yes, getting out,
Oh.
kind of allowing yourself to burn off any excess. I think the breathing part of getting out and walking after a meal is actually really important because you're getting the blood flow and you're getting the lung to also become a part of the digestion, which, we need every single aspect of it. And I also, getting the liver moving as well. That's going to also create the liver to kind
Hmm.
of jump in and be, if you're moving the blood around, that's going to stimulate the liver to start dumping any sort of appropriate digestive enzymes and bile and whatever else you need to be able to continue with digestion. So those are the things that come up for me with movement is burning off the excess,
Yes.
engaging the organs that are appropriate for optimal digestion.
Well, and also thinking about if we're bringing oxygen to the body, and oxygenated blood to all the tissues, that includes our intestines, right?
Yes.
So it's going to help for constipation or diarrhea to kind of regulate how fast things are dumping through or moving through our intestines so that they either speed up in the case of constipation or kind of regulate in terms of how fast in the case of diarrhea.
Yes, yes. Well, and then in terms of just bringing that back to Supercube, like you asked, sorry, I didn't necessarily answer that, is that, Supercube
That's
is just
okay.
so rooted in supporting all of the systems in the body and it's, fat and protein forward. So you're going to have that
Hmm.
stabilization of the blood sugar, which is exactly what we want. When we have a meal, we want it to increase a little bit, of course, but we don't want it skyrocketing and staying that way. So having that slow burn with the assistance of movement and fresh air and that bringing it totally back to the beginning of this conversation of that sense of community and all systems engaged, the better we are.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, last one is going to be cold drinks for warm beverages, right?
Oh my gosh. So I got lucky in that most of my teachers, when I was going to school, were all trained and from China, which was amazing. They were hard asses, don't get me
Mm.
wrong. It was really hard. But
Hmm.
they really got it into our head that cold beverages are just a huge no-no. There's a handful of no-nos in Chinese medicine, but this is one of the biggest ones. And if you've ever been to an acupuncturist for 6 visits or more, you will most likely have heard this. And it really has to do again with the spleen and stomach. And it is exactly the same as that scenario we talked about with like the piece of raw broccoli. When we think about foods that we want to have that are easy and, on digestion, there's categories that we want to avoid. Like we want to avoid cold, raw, greasy, heavy. Um, well, and then there's like sugar and alcohol, of course. Those are considered like toxic and, um, what we would call toxic. But the idea is that if you put in a bunch of ice cold water, you are going to have to expend a huge amount of caloric or energetic engagement in the body in order to make sure that water becomes the same temperature as your body, and then also be able to get what you need out of it, as opposed to a warm glass of
Mm,
water, which you just put in, and you're going to, it's right there. It's the same temperature. Not, I shouldn't say warm. Like warm is good in the, summer. Essentially, we want to work with where we are sorry, not in the summer, but in the like the fall or the winter. Warm is great.
mhm,
It's like the extreme cold and the extreme hot we want to stay away from. And then we want to kind of like
mhm,
balance where we are in the seasons based on cool or warm. And right now we'd be moving into more of a warm, like cool beverages on a hot day, like a cool, agua fresca. Hell yeah, get that in your body. That is going to cool.
mhm,
It's going to create a gentle sweat where you lower the temperature of the body. That's perfect.
mhm.
But yeah, it's a
Mm,
lot of energetic output for you to bring in all of that cold water, and it's very stunting. Like it's very stagnating. Like we talk about the flow of chi always needing to be moving, and the physiology of the body always being able to move forward with ease. And when we put in cold, it is not only stagnating for the tissues, it's stagnating, but it's almost kind of using energy at the same time that it's slowing things down, if that makes sense. So the contradictory
mhm,
nature isn't actually applicable, nor is it effective. What you want is something that's going to come in and be easeful and also be with the organism that it's in, so to speak, which would be your body. I hope that makes sense. I felt like I kind
mhm.
of talked in a little bit of a circle.
No, it does make sense. And I think what you're saying, especially for the fall, is exactly almost like what we crave. Like, like on those chilly days, you like want a hot cup of coffee or a nice cup of tea. And is that your body's way of saying, warm me up?
Yeah. Why do you think Starbucks crushes it on the pumpkin spice lattes?
I know it.
They're so gross.
But the cool thing about this is a year round, it's a year round trick where, warming spices like cinnamon, looking at like even peppermint, which
Yeah.
is not warming,
Well,
but
like ginger
that's really
or
good, and
cardamom or
fennel.
clove. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Even garlic in small
So,
amounts, even though it's a little hot, but if you're like gentle with it, that tends to work well.
mm,
Mhm.
because I know that for bloating, my favorite tip is to chew fennel seeds or drink fennel peppermint tea.
Mhm.
And I also, for constipation, because ginger is a big way to stimulate the vagus nerve.
Yes.
So I like to boil ginger root and, in a big pot of water with a bunch of ginger in it and just boil it and then let it cool with the ginger in it and then refrigerate it
Yes.
and then heat it up
Mhm.
as needed. And it's really like a nice, spicy, delicious kind of way to relax those intestinal muscles and let some of that pass through and also let some of that gas out.
Yes. And guess what organ the ginger herb in Chinese medicine, shangjiang is how we refer to it. Guess what channel it enters and comes in and nourishes and strengthens?
It has to be the spleen.
Damn right, sister, it's the spleen. It is.
Love it.
So good.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks. That was a good one.
Yeah, totally. I loved it. These were great, really easy suggestions that I think sometimes we just kind of forget about. You're like, I need salads. I'm trying to lose weight. No, no, actually. Soup is
Right.
great right now. Let's eat some
Right.
soup.
Yes. And you can definitely lose weight eating soup or eating cooked vegetables if that's your goal. Now, weight loss is
Yeah.
not my area of expertise. But I do know that, you know, we can still get all these wonderful fibers and all these diverse different foods that you would get if you were to eat a salad by doing like a roasted root vegetable kind of sheet pan, right?
Mm,
So it's not, so today, what we'll do is put in the show notes a little guide to a couple fall recipes for you and some ginger tea.
I love it. That's a great
Okay.
idea.
Yes.
Oh, Molly, I sure
Yes.
enjoy talking with you, dear. You're
Mhm.
just the best.
You're the best. Okay, mine that I saw, this is from your dietitian BFF on Instagram, and if you're not following her, she is
Okay,
hilarious.
what is it?
But
Your dietitian?
BFF.
What a fun name.
I know, she is funny. So her post was basically about microplastics in breast milk,
Oh,
and she is like does a lot with kind of the diversity and inclusion in dietetics, which I would say it's got to be 90% of dietitians are white women. So it's really nice to get another opinion.
hell yeah.
And it's nice to also see some diversity in the feed. You know what I mean? It gets really boring. But essentially, people, and I don't have kids, but you do,
Mm-hmm.
so we can. But people are saying that because microplastics were found in breast milk,
Oh,
then they have to source better formula from Europe. Stay with me. Well, there are two studies that looked at microplastics in human breast milk. One was from Thailand, and one was from Italy. So
hmm.
fancy that.
Okay.
We don't have any studies of microplastics in breast milk in the United States within the past 5 years that I could find. I can go back, but I don't care enough about breast milk, honestly. However, um,
You don't care about the babies?
what I care about, I love them, and I'm so happy for them, but it's not for me. Um, However, what I do know is that microplastics, plastic is one of the toxins. So when we're looking for detoxification or we're looking and we think, oh, I need to whatever it is, right? But the allure of detoxification, one of the things that we are enchanted to detoxify is plastics.
Yes.
And when someone has, like complex stuff that comes to me and we do like a tox screen on them, look at all the chemicals in their urine, more often than not, there's some form of plastic in there because plastic's in everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it really cracked me up that it's not just in the United States; it's really everywhere. I mean, this world is a plastic world,
Mm-hmm.
and just because something says BPA free, that just means that there's like a different, possibly worse plastic that we haven't studied yet
Right.
in it.
Right. Just the
So
one.
don't
Just
don't
that
think
one.
BPA
Yeah.
is the major problem.
Yes.
um, but my whole thing and my philosophy is we can't change who we are, and we can't do everything
Mm-hmm.
that we see and hear and learn all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That would make us crazy, and that wouldn't be good for our nervous system, or I imagine our spleen,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I really, in the name of the spleen, have to say, yeah, there are a lot of plastics. So here's what you can do. Maybe switch to a paper cup of warm water,
Yes.
but at least a metal or glass, right?
Mm-hmm.
A wooden cutting board is my favorite.
Yes.
And then like checking and seeing like, okay, I have Teflon pans, but and so you don't have to go out and replace all your pans today
Mm-hmm.
because that would be really tough on your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
and it would stress you out. So maybe just check in as they get chipped, get rid of it, and then get something like ceramic or one of those other kind of natural materials, stainless steel, cast iron, that is not going to have the potential of adding more to your toxic load. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm so glad you mentioned this. One of the things that I first kind of suggest to people when we do talk about microplastics, because they're so incredibly important when it comes to hormone balance, and that they love to sit on the same receptors as estrogen when they've kind of been, exposed to heat,
Right.
or who knows how they're behaving in our body. We don't have enough research on that. But what we do know is that we don't have a choice on what we're getting in our water. And one of the main things I love to suggest to people is, those, it's the brand Life Straw, how you can like use the straw in the creek and it will filter through like
Mm.
for survival and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So they have
Mm-hmm.
created a glass filter pitcher that we've been using for probably a couple of years here, and I buy it for everybody for Christmas and stuff. But it actually filters, 4 different things. It does the bacteria and the parasites. It does forever chemicals, but it also filters microplastics, which is huge. And you don't
Whoa.
come across that very often. And then they have chemicals and pesticides. I'm not sure exactly how many they're doing with that, because I think that's probably pretty hard to keep up on, because chemicals does include pharmaceuticals, which I think is going to be a really intense moving target for most technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Mm-hmm.
in the big picture, this Life Straw, I mean, I found mine, I think, for like $30 or something. It wasn't terrible. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
the filters last for a long time. But I guess when I think about these plastics, and I think about the world of hormones, and I think about all of these young women that are starting their periods so early, and just, the rate of infertility skyrocketing, and just the ability for, us to be able to control so much of what happens with our bodies. That's one thing that we just kind of can't. I mean, you can not buy, zucchini wrapped in plastic from the store. You can get it from a farm if you can, if it's accessible and you can afford it. Um, but I think one thing you can do is make sure that your water is filtered with, in any way you can, the best technology out there to be able to keep the plastic out. And this is what I know so far. There might be something better, of course. But this works great. And I think that's really important
Mm.
for people to know, is if, we need water and we don't need plastic going in it.
And is this pitcher glass or plastic?
So they have both options, but I have the glass one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing, like, so maybe the price is slightly more for the glass, but it's probably going to last longer. And if you're spending money to get rid of microplastics in your water, maybe choose the glass option.
Yes. Yeah, the plastic 7 cup
Oh,
is
are you there?
44. I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, the glass pitcher is sixty four
Okay,
ninety
love it.
five. It says here. Yes. So I must have found a deal on it
Oh,
somewhere.
good.
But yeah, not so bad.
That's a lot better than some of those, like, because a countertop distiller
Yes.
would do a similar job, but they're
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want entry level, this is great.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know if those,
Love
what
it.
are those big beautiful ones that people get a lot, that are like, they're metal and they have they've been around forever. I can't remember. Oh my gosh, it's gonna drive me nuts. I can't remember the name of those, but I don't know if they do microplastics. I know that this is just, anyway. I'm not making. Never mind. I'm making zero
Oh, like
points
the
right now.
H2O Labs one?
No, they're like the big. They're countertop, and they're metal, and they're beautiful. They have like two
Yes.
pieces and a little spigot at the bottom. They're known for their great
Yeah.
filtration, but I don't know if they actually do microplastics. My guess is they're figuring it out. But anyway, yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, that's
That's
so
good to know.
interesting. Plastics are, it's something that, you're right, we have to live with, and we have to be able to make the best decisions around. And honestly, with the price of food going up, I find that I'm purchasing a lot more plastic that I would like, because it's so much more convenient and affordable for me to shop at Trader Joe's than it is at New Seasons or Whole Foods right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is such a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they
Yep.
have stuff that's not packaged, they're like, "Do you want to put this in a plastic bag?" And I'm like, "Why? Just put it in the
I know. I
brown
just throw
paper
it in the
bag I
cart
brought."
and
I'm like,
everyone
"What's
thinks
the
I'm
deal? Yeah,
crazy.
am I gonna go home and
Yeah.
wash it anyway? I don't
Yeah.
understand this."
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. And I there are stores that don't sell in plastic, but again, sometimes these things are just easier, like you're saying. And if you're like, we're all living a life where we're balancing so many different things. And so it's like, I like to use the analogy of standing in the store and reading the labels.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you can say, okay, I know that I want to be gluten free. And then you go in to the store and you're reading the label and you're like, oh, but this has seed oils. Oh, but this has benzoate in it. Oh, but this has, you know what I mean? Oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
in a plastic thing. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
this unfortunately was made in China. And you can just go down the list of every single thing you've ever heard, and then you'd never buy anything.
Yeah, and you're like, now what? Now
So
I'm just up shit creek
anytime,
here with no food. This is so stupid. And that's a
Exactly.
real
And I've spent an
experience.
hour in the grocery store
Yes,
freaking out.
yes. And the lights are bothering me, and I don't want to be in here, and everything's expensive. Oh my gosh, so ridiculous.
And I'm in a trance because
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the grocery store and they've
Mm-hmm.
designed it to put you in a trance,
Mm-hmm.
which I do kind of like I said. Okay, so, but if I am reading labels, then I'm going to do pickup, or I'm going to go on the pickup website and I'm going to read the labels before I get there so that I know what to get.
Yep.
Because I want to do that when I'm ready, when I'm fresh, when I'm not
Yep.
vulnerable, and when I have the capacity to process, okay, if I'm doing a 4 or 6 week elimination diet and I'm eliminating A, B, and C, I'm not worrying about any other letters of the alphabet,
Yes.
right? Because it's hard enough to avoid A, B, and C. And so I think it's almost unpopular where it's like, okay, but shouldn't I be avoiding everything, GMOs and seed oils and blah, 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 and processed foods and ultra processed foods. And, there's just so many nuances
Mm-hmm.
to all of that. And like you're saying here with the plastics, like, let's just start with one thing and then move to the next thing and do it in a way that is still nourishing to your body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, if you think about how, like, if you're like, okay, I'm going to be mindful of plastic. Okay, I kind of think of it like this. Like when you think about, I want to be mindful of pesticides and herbicides and things on my vegetables. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, I can't really be mindful of all of it because most like, you know what I mean? It's just things are going to be dirty, but maybe I can be mindful of these dirty dozen, right? The ones that have the worst amount
Hmm.
of pesticides and herbicides applied to them. So you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure I buy organic and, maybe a farm choice of those. Same thing with
Hmm.
plastics. You're like, okay,
Or wash it really well.
and wash it really well. Yeah, exactly. But with plastic,
If organic is out of your budget.
100%. Just scrub the shit out of it. Let it soak with your dish soap in the sink for warm water, whatever. Get it all off of there. We do that a lot here. I always see apples bobbing around in bubbles. Um, but the thing with plastic is its exposure to heat. Now, you don't know how long that water
Hmm.
bottle with water in it
Right.
sat on a truck in the sun to get to where you are. You may not experience
Hmm.
that with a piece of zucchini wrapped in plastic because it was most likely chilled. Its exposure to heat, which is going to break down the plastics and release into the food, maybe. That's kind of the idea that we know why it's so difficult for us is the actual breakdown of plastic, which comes with heat exposure. Those may be thinking that through, like, okay, maybe the things that I'm going to be mindful with plastic is, has this been exposed to a lot of heat? Like if you're getting a cup of coffee, don't
Hmm.
drink through the plastic cup on the top. Take it off. What is the point?
Right.
I mean, I know it's like a whole
Right.
vibe, but also so are your hormones when they suck. That's a big vibe.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And estrogen dominance,
Mm-hmm.
which comes with those estrogen receptors being taken up by things like plastic, right?
Yes.
Is what causes a lot of these symptoms too,
Mm-hmm.
like the fatigue and acne and bloating. And tell me more.
Yeah. Oh, fatigue, acne, bloating, brain fog, I think is probably one of the really biggest ones. Inflammation,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
the inability to have like even just a regular cycle because the signals are getting crossed because you have extra estrogen coming in and, kind of just sending signals that aren't appropriate at the right time. So you could have
Hmm.
confusion, you know, um, what else are we looking at here? I don't know. You could even think of just, PMDD, PMS. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
polycystic ovarian syndrome. The list is long. There's many ways in which the hormones
Yes.
can get interrupted and go on a trajectory for
Right.
that person's constitution that isn't what we want it to be. And we don't know all of it right
So
now,
then
which is
what's
hard,
more?
but
No, we don't. So then what's more expensive, right? Changing over to a wooden cutting board or having to then figure out and try all these prescription medications and go to multiple specialists to,
hmm
deal with an estrogen dominant condition that could possibly be prevented by limiting, reducing
yeah.
plastic in your
And
life.
I mean, I think there's technology, but we don't know how to unwind plastic from our body. Some of it probably comes out through our liver and our kidneys, but what's sitting in our tissues? If it's in our breast milk, where the hell else is it? And how do we get it out? We don't know.
Hmm.
All we know is we can avoid putting it in as much as possible.
Hmm. Well, there are actually quite a few studies that look at people who stopped using plastic at all,
Yeah.
and their levels go down pretty quickly.
Nice.
So our body does get it out.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are some forever chemicals, so I'm not quite sure like what's going on there, but like, so are they, because forever is not a word that I agree with in terms of like health or a meal plan or a supplement or anything.
Sure.
Your immune system changes every 6 months, so there's no way that anything could be forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be interested to learn more about that.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same. I haven't gone down too many rabbit holes with the quote unquote forever chemicals. I just, again, like plastics and pesticides and whatnot, you just try to be as mindful
Yeah.
as you can when you walk into the trans
Yes.
supermarket.
Or have prepared before you go in so that you can enjoy your trance.
Yes, yes. Preparation is key. You're so good at that. You're so good at pressing the prep. I love it. It's great. No, people need to hear that. It's really important.
Oh, you know, it really is. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome.
You're awesome.
You are really awesome. And it's so cool to get your perspective on all of this stuff.
Yes. And everybody knows that at the end of this, they learned so much about the spleen.
I learned a lot about the spleen.
Good. I hope so. You're going to go talk to your friends and be like, do you know
Oh
why your
my
spleen is
gosh.
so important? They're like, I don't know. I don't have one.
That's definitely my next party trick.
Uh,
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Now, Lara, tell everybody how they can find you.
You can find me on the worldwide intranet at Lala's Wellness, which is also the Supercube site. Lala's Wellness on Instagram or Supercube Me on Instagram are the best places to find me.
Love it. Thanks again, and I really appreciate you.
Of
Bye.
course, my dear. Bye.
Thank you for being here today. We are Women's Gut Health on YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. In the show notes, you'll find the recipe share drive, citations to evidence supporting this topic, and fun links we discussed today. See you next week.